This is what's happening, and it's very bad. And if Trump doesn't get on this fast, I might drop off the Trump train myself. This is really dangerous because you've got a tremendous amount of rapes and murders going on, and drugs being sold and bought by Americans that will die from these drugs. This is very serious. If he doesn't do something fast, I might jump off the Trump train. I'll tell you that right now. And he has the power, because he has the power to protect the border. That's his job, is to protect the border. So he can just build that damn wall right now. He can send the army right now to the border to keep the people out. They just have to turn around and go back. Once they know that when they come to the border, that they have to turn around and go back, they'll stop coming to the border. Once they get that message, they'll stop trying to come through. Of course, there will be a war with the drug cartels. You can imagine. That's why you need the army on the border. That's right. And I'll be off the Trump train fast, and sticks Hexenhammer 666 and his chest aren't going to talk me back into it either. Hello, everybody. I'm Felina. Looks like we have a big problem on our border. Apparently, even though by court order, hundreds of children were released, and as we know, about 83% of the adults that brought those children in disappeared and went back to Mexico, which means that they were smuggling them in. They were going to be used as human trafficking. So this is a huge problem. So according to the New York Times, and I'm using the New York Times because it was referred to me by a conservative talk show host that used to work for the CIA. His name is Buck Sexton, and you can rely. He's very reliable and very knowledgeable and always studying things. So if he's using this article, then I'm going to use this article. So apparently it's increased fivefold. In May of 2017, it was 2,400. And as of last month, it skyrocketed to almost 13,000. And a lot of these children aren't really children, they're teenagers, and they're flooding the border. Apparently because they heard about 90% of the people that are flooding the borders are able to stay. They're not being sent back. If it's the parents, if it's the teenagers themselves, if it's the drug cartels that are offering, come into this country and you can work for us, you can sell drugs, and you can enter sex trafficking. Because we're looking at a huge number of teenagers coming over, I find that very interesting. And usually in sex trafficking, they're looking for children or teenagers. Teenagers probably are the most popular of all. And teenagers are the ones that enter MS-13. As you know, the MS-13 gang, to get into the gang, you have to prove your worth and you have to murder somebody in a horrific way. You have to murder an American in a horrific way to get into the gang. And apparently 77,000 pounds of fentanyl has crossed the border, rather than in 2011, it was 12,000 pounds. So that's totally skyrocketed. And we know it was about 69,000, 70,000 people died from illegal drugs last year. I'm assuming because of the amount of drugs that are coming through the border has skyrocketed. And the amount of people that are crossing the border, remember, these people are not crossing the border to some of them work, but there's less and less jobs available on farms. You think, oh, they're going to come over and they're going to work on the farms, and we need them for farm workers. Actually, what's happening is that these jobs are being replaced by machines that can do a more efficient job. They're quicker, and these people, you let people into the fields, they have to use the facilities, and usually they use the fields, or they have a porta potty out there, and that is not a good idea to have that near vegetables. That's the reason why we have so many of these E. coli or salmonella outbreaks, and it always hits the vegetables. I don't mean people or myself. It hits the vegetables because people have to use the facilities and they have to use it in the fields. So our need for low wage workers, or workers that will work a quarter of the wage, as far as picking crops is going down. But I suppose the really wealthy people in California want them for housekeeping, gardening. They've taken over all the roofing jobs, drywall jobs, construction jobs in California, which were predominantly African American. African Americans had those jobs, and they were able to have a family, a wife, and send 2 children to college. That's how much money African Americans were making in construction. And they used to be, it was the walking by a construction site, you used to see a lot of African Americans, not in California anymore. That's the reason why there are 150,000 Americans on the streets of LA that are homeless, and some of them are working, but they're just not making enough money to put a roof over their heads. But if your jobs are being taken over by somebody who's going to be working for a quarter of the wage, then they're not going to hire you, because by law, they have to pay you full wage. You could take them to court. If an investigator went in and found out this is an American citizen and you're paying them only a quarter of the wage, then the employer gets in trouble. So they will not hire Americans. So the more people that flood the border, the less jobs there are for Americans. And there's I'm looking on the computer trying to find new numbers for homelessness, because it says that in Los Angeles, it's 55,000 people who are living on the streets, and we know now it's 150,000. It's probably more now, because that was a few months ago that figure came out. So these figures are completely wrong. Hawaii was the number 1 state to be homeless, and the healthcare system is getting really taxed, really drained in Hawaii and these states that have an overabundance of people coming in over the border. We're at 90% capacity as far as the temporary tents go. Like I said, the children, it's increased. We're calling them children, they're mostly teenagers, increased 5-fold. And we do know that women who cross that border, young girls, children, all get raped. The drug cartels run, all the Mexican states, making a huge amount of money because of the amount of people that are crossing the border. And most of them are teenagers and children that are crossing the border. You have to pay these coyotes to cross the border. It's $1,000 to $10,000. And if you don't have the money, you sell your body. We know that 90% of the women that cross the border get raped. It's probably more like 100% that cross the border, because you got to pay the coyotes through the drug cartels. Otherwise, if you don't pay the drug cartels, then they won't take you across the border, or they'll kill you, or they'll take you in and you'll be their whore, or you have to sell drugs for them, gang members. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. Either you're going to do it on the Mexican side of the border, or you're going to do it on the United States side of the border. So we have an enormous amount of drugs coming in, an enormous amount of people that will be selling the drugs, and an enormous amount of children coming over the borders. Our shelters across the nations are almost full, and we really don't have an accurate count of the amount of people that are homeless in America. They say that they did a study on how they want to figure out if they could get an accurate count on how many homeless there were. So they went out to count the homeless people, and there were people that were watching them and actors that were pretending that they were homeless. And what they recorded was that every third person did they record and talk to. There were some actors on the streets pretending to be homeless, which they didn't talk to at all whatsoever. So most homeless people are not recorded. So whatever amount that you see on the web, just times it by 5, or it could be more than that. And the number of households, but this is in 2011, was it 12.6 amount of households that are just adults that are starving in America, and 20.5 have children that are starving in America. So we have shelters that are full to capacity, that are getting filled with people coming over the border, that we have Americans that are on the streets all over this country in the millions, and veterans that have no home and can't get into these shelters because these shelters are now getting filled more and more with the Mexicans that are coming over the border because they need a place to live, of course, but they're put into shelter immediately. Apparently, the sponsors, according to the New York Times, the people who these people are coming across the border would be going to aren't coming forward because they don't want to get caught. They're all afraid. I don't know if that's true or not. Honestly, I don't know if that's true or not. But we've got a huge problem. And I'm sure if you're up on the news, you're aware that the courts have been taken over by liberal judges appointed by Barack Obama. A lot of liberals, Democrats working in the courthouses. And when they arrest someone for rape or murder or domestic violence or selling drugs, and they hear that ICE has come in the building, they open up the back door and they let these people free. They literally, it's catch and release. They let them free because they don't want them deported by ICE. Now, why wouldn't you want a murderer, a drug dealer, a rapist, somebody who does domestic violence, probably against their girlfriend or wife, who is probably Mexican? So you would think that they would care. If they care so much about having the Mexicans here, don't you care about the safety of the Mexicans that are here? No, they don't. They don't want them deported. They will do anything not to deport them. In fact, I've heard judges apologizing. To criminals. We want you to stay in this country and we want you to be happy. We don't want you deported. Apologize just so they will stay in this country. Of course, that was under Obama, but they're still doing it because these judges are liberal and they're appointed by Obama. And the people who work at these courthouses are liberal, probably voted for Obama or Hillary. This is a serious problem. We have homeless people. Now, my friend that was homeless, she disappeared completely. And I knew she was dying because her stomach was bloated because she was an alcoholic, because she was self-medicating. She actually needed medication for anxiety. And a lot of people on the streets have some kind of mental disorder. Anxiety can be cured by a pill. I mean, and then you can go on with your life. There's a lot of people that are on these medications, except they get the medication. But if you are paralyzed by fear, it's hard for you to live and be fruitful and to get a place of your own. But she was dropped off by her father, just drove her out here and just dropped her off. And I saw that her stomach, and you see that there's a certain bloating going on. That means that the pancreas and the liver are swelled, and she doesn't have long to live, and her teeth were rotting out, and so she's probably dead, to be completely honest with you. We have this problem in America where some people are just one paycheck away from being homeless, where they can't pay for the roof over their heads, or they can't pay for their food. And apparently they earn too much to get food stamps, which is another problem. That I listened to a reliable journalist who always reports on the truth. And a lot of these illegal people who are coming here illegally have more than one EBT card. So they're probably getting more than one form of welfare. They have like 5 or 6 with different names on them, because they come over the border and you just keep giving different names. There's no way to really prove. You really need e-verify, some kind of system that's going to prove that you are this person, and you cannot get another EBT card or any more welfare. You shouldn't get any by law if you're not an American citizen, but they have them and they're getting them. And there's Americans who some get it, some don't get it. They need an EBT card, or when they get an EBT card, they don't get enough money per month. And then you have people who are here illegally that are probably selling. What they do is they trade these cards in, and the month might be worth $500. Some get $1,000 a month. Most people get, like, if you're American citizen, usually you get about less than $200 a month. And they'll give you, like a store will give you half its worth, and then they'll get the money. So you look, say it's worth $500, you keep $250, and they give $250 cash to these people. And then they go and they apply for another EBT card. They just say that they lost it, and they have to pay $5 to have it replaced, which is actually pretty simple. And it's a way to make a lot of money, and they do it all the time. They do it all the time. There's no picture on the EBT cards. It's a food stamp card when I say EBT. So there are countless impoverished people, and I've mentioned the Appalachians many times, who don't have clean water, so they give their kids Mountain Dew, and their teeth are rotted when they're young. And the poverty, check online to look at the poverty of the Appalachians and just how bad it is, what they have to endure, and that they don't really get any health care. That big Obamacare didn't apply to the Appalachians. They don't get anything. And there's a lot of Appalachians. There are people in this country that need, even if they get food stamps, they need a little more, but they're not getting it. Some people need it, and there's an enormous amount of people, countless amount of people, who are homeless, who are not being counted in the census. And this is very sad. Yet, and we have Americans that are on the street that can't get work because their jobs are now given to illegal aliens who get a quarter of the wage. Then they get full health care, welfare, housing, all the Section 8 housing that these homeless Americans could be going into. EBT cards, more than one. They're getting, that's why there's $120 billion that's being sent out of the country every year by illegal aliens. Why is that? Where are they getting this money? Where are they getting this money? Well, they're getting this money from the government. They're probably they have more than one name, and they work under the table. And then we have Americans who are really impoverished and one step from the street. One step from the street. One paycheck from being homeless. This is a huge problem, and they're flooding the borders. Of course, we have to, the Democrats, and blame the Democrats all you want, and you should blame the Democrats because they're letting criminals go. People who have actually committed crimes go. Coming into this country once is a misdemeanor. Coming in a second time after you've been thrown out is a felony. They're letting all these people go. Why? Because they want their vote. They're assured of their vote because they're giving them free everything. So they're assured of their vote. They even want the vote of the criminals. And yes, you can vote in California. A judge ruled last year, if you get a license, you're automatically registered to vote. And the voter registration forms, basically, you got 4 pages and you knock it down. Don't have an ID. Don't have a utility bill. Don't have a library card. You got an address? Just put an address down. Yet, the Americans who are homeless cannot vote. They're unable to vote because they don't have an address. And they can't get assistance because to get assistance, you have to have an address. Everything, you can't get anything unless you actually have an address. So if you're homeless, you're out of this. What do you think these people are homeless for? They're on the street. This is it. This is it. We have lawlessness. The Democrats are completely lawless. They're allowing theft. If you come into a country and it's not your country, and you expect to really scam the system, I mean, you're not just taking welfare, you're taking welfare several times over, and you're taking jobs away from Americans that are on the street. Every person that's on the street might not need to be on the street. That's theft. And the Democrats are allowing it. And then there's outright crime. That is outright theft. First of all, that is outright theft. And then there's the other crime. There's theft, outright other kinds of theft when you actually rob a store, rob somebody's house, murder, rape, domestic violence, drug trafficking, sex trafficking too. They let them out the door. The Democrats let them out the door because they don't want to lose their vote. They have to take over. They have to take over this country, and they have to turn it to communism. Communism is socialism. That's what it is. USSR, United Soviet Socialist Republic. Nazi, National Socialist Workers' Party. Socialist. They're both forms of socialism. So you think communism is really different. No, it's not. It's just a fancy way of saying communism. That's all it is. And this is what they want. And Trump was elected to put that wall up. You put that wall up. Once that wall goes up, hundreds of thousands of children and girls are no longer going to be raped because Obama opened those doors and let them come in. And what happened? Rapes galore. They all got raped. MS-13 came in. The boys got raped too and went into the MS-13 gangs and are killing right and left. We have so many drunk driving accidents of people getting killed from illegal aliens who are drunk drivers. It's right. It's like every day you hear about it. I don't know the law. I know that the laws, Mexico has their own set of laws, and they only prosecute 3% of all crime. So 97% of all crime is not prosecuted. It's a different world. They live by a different set of laws, and they believe, you see, the problem, there's another problem, is that they want to bring back the Aztec civilization and call it Aztlan. They don't want to call it Mexico or America. They want to call it Aztlan. They don't even know how bad the Aztecs were. How many, there are 5,000 to 6,000 sacrifices a day by either cutting your heart out, they cut the heart out, they drain the blood, they eat the heart, and they cannibalize the whole body, or they flay you alive by removing your skin. That's the wonderful civilization of the Aztecs. And the other civilizations in South America, it was all about slavery and human sacrifice. And this you want to bring back. These Mexicans do not know that you don't want to bring that civilization back. And number two, they have no idea of the history of the Mexican-American War. They have no idea that every single Mexican, after the war, first of all, we offered to pay for all of the land. Texas annexed itself. Texas went to war with Mexico and annexed itself because it didn't like the laws of Mexico. It didn't like living under that oppressive regime. America was going to pay them $30 million for the land, which was trillions of dollars back then. That was a lot of money. After the war, which was a very short war, and we won everything. America won Mexico as well. Won everything. We had our flag planted for 9 months in Mexico City. We could have taken all of Mexico, and we should have taken all of Mexico. This wouldn't be happening today. There wouldn't be drug cartels on the border. There would be, people would have lived under law, where it would be 97% of crime is prosecuted rather than just 3%. It would be a law-abiding drug, very little drug, very, very little drug country, or one country, because it would be a part of America. But what did America do? We gave Mexico back. We gave them back the land that was the Aztecs. See, this other land is when the Spanish conquistadors came over. They claimed some land in the Americas, which, as you know, America is blamed for also, belonged to the Native Americans. So technically, Mexico was taking Native American land, and they also tried to keep taking. If you look at my video about the myth of the Mexican-American War, it's not too far away. Watch that video. It'll tell you in detail. And plus, women have no rights in Mexico. And Mexico could take your land away, if you are Mexican, anytime they wanted to. They wanted your land, they'd just take it away. After the war, we won the war. We gave them half the land that we won back, half of it, which was all the land that the Aztecs owned before the Spanish came over. That's it. Everything south of the Rio Grande. There's no Aztec archaeological sites or digs or monuments of any kind north of the Rio Grande. They're not. Nothing. And we paid them $15 million for the land that was left. Paid $15 million for the land that was left because Texas had already annexed itself. and we gave them back. So, and every single person who wanted to remain in Mexico was Mexican, stayed in Mexico. That their ancestors made a choice to remain in Mexico. And everybody who was Mexican is, oh, this is the land our ancestors farmed. No, this was the land that was owned by the Spanish conquistadors that they had for a little while, not for very long. And then they left, and then the whole war started. If you were Mexican, you see, any Mexican that was on the land, United States, and owned land in the United States, that was farming the land, their land was not taken away. They became automatic American citizens. So no Mexican can say, my ancestors farmed that land. No, the ancestors of the people that are living in California or New Mexico or Arizona or part of Utah and Wyoming, their ancestors farmed that land because they decided to stay in America. Any Mexican that wanted to be an American could just stay in America. And they could claim, back then you could just claim land. You didn't have to pay for it. They could claim land in America. Back then, that's the way it was. Everybody got their land, everybody kept their land, and the women and the people got rights that were unheard of in Mexico. Remember, this land, Mexico, used to be the Aztec civilization. It was a pretty tough civilization to live under. So that's a bunch of baloney. You're coming over here now, but your ancestors chose to stay in Mexico, and America gave Mexico back to Mexico. We let them have the half of it back, which was the Aztec civilization. So I gave you in a little nutshell. The truth. And this is why all these people are flooding the border, because they don't know the truth. They want all Americans to go back to Europe. But the truth is, most of the Aztec people were killed off by some disease, which also killed off a lot of the Spanish conquistadors. Most Mexicans and South America are nearly 100% European. So why don't they all go back? And the first people to conquer the Americas were the Spanish conquistadors, right? That took the land away from the native people, right? So why don't they go back? Why don't they go back to Europe? Why are they telling us to go back? We're probably just as European as they are. But somehow they have this idea because they don't know history. And we have people in America that are suffering, that are on the street, that are starving, that there's not enough room in the shelters, and there isn't enough housing for the Americans who are poor. And these people are flooding the border. It's time to put the wall up. These people who are coming over are not homeless, and they're not starving. They know that you come up here, you get a free ride. You live in California, it'll be sunny. You don't have to deal with winter. And it will be a free ride. That's why they're coming. That's it. That's it. That's it. They're not homeless and starving like the people in America are. You come over here, it's outright theft. We're paying for you. We're paying for you up and down, plus you're getting paid under the table. Plus. So it's time for Trump to build that wall, because it's his job as president to protect the borders. And it doesn't really matter what Congress or the Senate say. Remember when Obama said, I've got a pen and a phone and he'll just do it? Well, it's Trump's job to protect the border of the United States. And people are coming in and getting stuff for free. Their whole life paid for. Well, we have other children, women, children, and men who are starving and who are on the streets, who have no jobs, who are dying from the drugs that are coming over, who are being sold into sex trafficking, who are being killed by the MS-13 gangs. I mean, I could go on and on and on, who are being killed by drunk drivers every day. People, American citizens, are dying every single day. And the courts are letting them go because they want their vote. Doesn't matter what crime you committed. We want you to stay. They're insane. The Democrats are insane. And it's time for Trump to just be the parent and lay down the law fast, because this country is going to die. We can't pay for it. We don't have the health care. We don't have enough doctors for the people we have now. Doctors are leaving the profession. We don't have the sewage systems. We don't have the educational systems. The children in America, the African Americans are suffering. The Hispanics in this country are suffering because there aren't enough interpreters for all these people. There are not enough teachers for all these people. This is huge. And most of our farmland has been sold to China. Most of and our wine country too. China's bought that too. And also all the water in California, why there's a drought, because most of the water is used for alfalfa. We grow alfalfa and then we sell it to China. And then there's some kind of trout that the reservoirs that get full during the winter that should go into the farmlands in California, well, they dump it, and they dump it really because they want to save this small kind of trout fish. They want to save the life of this trout fish. And so they dump it, and when they dump it really fast, and it kills this trout fish. So they're creating their own drought. They're creating their own global warming climate crisis crap. And the people that you're bringing in, all these people, well, you know what? You don't have enough. You're not going to be able to grow enough vegetables for all those people. There's not going to be enough water for the cattle that you're going to slaughter or get milk from, or the animals. You're creating your own drought, so that the fact that they're and the whole burning, they won't do controlled burnings because they say it lets too much carbon in the atmosphere. So the state of California took that over a number of years ago. I think it was maybe 1983, something like that. There used to be controlled burnings. And what happens is that all the dead wood and growth on the forest floor piles up really high. And then when it gets very dry and hot, it turns into a wildfire, and the wildfire just goes crazy. When it gets really dry, and it literally doesn't rain in California, it gets very, very dry. So it's easy for a wildfire or somebody just to drop a match, and you've destroyed half the state. And there is such a thing as controlled burning. In fact, I dated somebody who did that for a living, and he was also a bluegrass. I think it was bluegrass. But you do controlled burnings, and you burn all this stuff off, which prevents the wildfires. But they won't change the law in California and allow for these prescribed controlled burnings to prevent the wildfires. So you've got these wildfires that burn forever, and the clouds of black smoke, and all your carbon, and the land that gets killed off, and the wildlife that gets killed off. You're not going to have any state left for all these people that you're moving in, and you're not going to have any health care. It's going to be like Cuba. It's going to be like Cuba. They use their hospitals. See, after school hours, that's the hospital. You go into the classroom, and there's some kind of doctors there. And Fidel Castro, when he was sick, he flew in doctors from France, or he went to France, and he actually got good health care. That's why he got good health care. They don't get good health care, but that's what's going to happen in California. But I say, wall off the damn state. let them all come in, wall off the state, or just put a few sticks of dynamite in the what do you call it, the border, you know, explode and just push that whole thing out into the ocean. California, let it be its own country, and they won't take any federal money. No money from tax-paying Americans will go to California. That's it. This is what they want. They're going rogue. And that state is going to burn up anyway. It's going to burn up. They're making their own global warming climate crap because they're creating it. They're creating it. And it was under Obama that said, you know, oh, gotta save the trout fish. So dump all that water out. And the farmers took the state to court, and I think they lost. It was like, we need this water so we can grow crops so people can eat. So all the people that are coming in over the border that need to eat, where do you think the food is going to come from? China? Think China's going to grow the food? Not if we're growing them alfalfa. No, they bought tons of farmland in the middle of America. And they bought Napa Valley, you know, wine country, Marin County. They're buying tons of it. And for some reason last year, that burned down mysteriously as well. So they're buying up the best real estate in America. So where are we going to grow this food? And where are we going to get the water from? And we're going to build some big desalinization plants like they do in Israel. It takes a long time to desalinize water. Well, anyway, went a little past my time, and I'd never expected to talk this much about this situation that's going on in the border, but I've talked about it before. I keep educating you people. I keep educating you people, and nobody's listening. Nobody wants to listen to on the Mexican-American War, the myth of the Mexican-American War. And that the myth is what's flooding our borders, is because they've got history wrong. They got history completely wrong. But I gave you a synopsis. Go watch the video, and I'll see you soon. I'm sorry that it went over a little bit this time. Okay, next time I'll be better. I'll be a good girl and cut it short. So anyway, goodbye everyone. See you next time.